Member nations of the world's wealthiest countries, the G20, have backed the global tax deal at a summit held in Rome on Saturday. The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD, deal calls for the implementation of a global minimum corporate tax of 15% by 2023. So far, some 136 countries have signed on, but what impact will this have on African countries? Well, the continent has been losing up to $89 billion in systemic tax avoidance by multinational corporations, and this will further reduce African governments' tax collections. Over 100 civil society organizations from across Africa have criticized the OECD and G20 proposal and are calling on the G20 heads of state summit to stop the deal. They want a more inclusive, just and democratic process of international tax reforms that look at the interests of developing nations and the African continent. Earlier on, I had a chat with Chenai Mukumba, a policy research and advocacy manager at Tax Justice Network Africa. I began by asking her whether the proposal is a fair deal for Africa.
In certain cases, there's actually been research that shows that we may actually lose in terms of some African countries. So I think the long and short of it is it's not fair, and a number of proposals that African countries had put forward have not been reflected in the deal that's now been agreed on.
What are some of these proposals that haven't been reflected?
Now, the African Tax Administration Forum, which is sort of, the technical institution that's been working with African countries, indicates that, on the African continent, corporate income tax rate, the corporate income tax range is between 25 and 30%. So when you put in place a global minimum tax rate of 15%, you actually haven't taken away the incentive for a multinational corporation to shift its revenues from an African country that potentially, say, has a corporate income tax rate of 25%, to another country that has a lower tax rate, because that gap between the 25 and 15 is particularly large and so insufficient to disincentivize multinational corporations from shifting their revenues.
Both Kenya and Nigeria have not signed the OECD deal yet, and other African countries have expressed their reservations. Now that the G20 have endorsed the deal further, what are the next steps as negotiations continue?
So there's still a lot in terms of detail that needs to be fleshed out with regards to this deal, and so there's still a lot of room for potential intervention to try and make it more favorable for African countries. But also, in addition to that, when you sign to or agree, to a deal at the multilateral level, it still needs to be domesticated, right? And so there is still room, particularly for different civil society groups or other actors that want to influence this deal by contributing to the conversation at the national level, by engaging, say, with members of parliament to potentially see the extent to which they could stall its domestication at national level.
What can be done to ensure we have more participation from Africa in future delegations?
So as an institution, as a member of the Global Alliance for Tax Justice, we have been advocating that all conversations, that speak to tax need to happen at the United Nations. The OECD, at the end of the day, is a regional institution, and its primary sort of stakeholder are OECD countries. So you can't be surprised when you see a deal that in the long and short of it benefits OECD countries, developed countries. So our proposal has been, and also now we've seen the group of 77 come forward with the same proposal, that they be a tax body at the UN be established, where developing and developed countries can contribute to these conversations at the same level.